welcome. It's lovely to be back at a DevReach. It's my first time in Bulgaria, so thank you for welcoming me. And yeah, this is me. I'm a lot of things, but a progress ninja is the one that counts today, and a pineapple connoisseur. So if you see pineapples around and things like that's for me, because I love pineapples. I also founded the Women of .NET, so if you know women are a woman and you're interested in .NET, you can always come and find me and chat to me. Everywhere on the internet, apart from GitHub, I am Layla Codesit on GitHub, where you will find everything that we're looking at today. I am Layla-P, and there are no real slides today, just a few things in Markdown in here. It's all going to be live coded. So come on in, chop chop, in you go, find a seat. And what are we going to look at today? Well, if I scroll on down here, we're going to look at top-level statements, global using, everything that you can see there. I can't make this bigger because, I don't know, Ryder doesn't like making Markdown bigger, but it doesn't matter because we'll go through all of this. But I want to tell you why I created this talk. There were two reasons. One of them was I was trying to help developers coming from other platforms and maybe from framework over to .NET Core. So I wanted to show folks how to do the most basic sort of things that you as a knowledgeable developer might want to do. Also, as Sam says, we do just get into our comfort zone, we get into our routines of doing things, and that was the other reason why I created this talk, because when .NET 6 came out, I hated it. Absolutely hated .NET 6. I did, you know, a .NET New on the console, and I was like, what is this? I'm not going to use it. So let's have a look at .NET 5 and what I was completely attached to. So this is a .NET 5 application, just a straight-up web API brought in. And just going to draw your attention to all the usings there first, because we'll come back to that in a moment. So there are a plethora of usings, and then we can scroll down to actually get to the code. So down here, let me just minimize this. We have our program, and then we come down, and we've got our main method. This is all very familiar. We have our host builder, all of this, and that was kind of all you had to do within your program, because everything else was in your startup. And you can see that we bring the startup file in here. So if I head on over, oh, more usings. I know they're not all being used, but when I fiddle with code, they do start coming in. So down here, we've got all these indentations. I'm drawing your attention to this just in case you're not familiar with the new stuff that's out. So I have my configuration, and then down here in the configure services is where I go and add things to my iService collection. And that's where I put all my dependency injection, register all the services that I want to be in my IOC container, my inversion of control container, and get all of those in. And then if I come down a little bit further, we're in the application builder. So this is now our app, and we can register all middleware and things like that that our web application will need to run. So you can see everything down here that we need. So I was incredibly attached to this way of structuring applications. Now, when I got .NET 6, it threw it all out. So let's go and have a look. I won't do too much flicking around with the light to dark, so don't fret. So if we do .NET New, this is actually going to be .NET 7, but it's the same difference. So Web API, let's do minimal. Oops, we need one hash. There we go. All right, so this has now created a new .NET 7 web API using minimal APIs. So let's have a look at what this looks like. So I just have a program file. So let's go and have a look in here. Okay, this looks like this should be in the other room, in the JavaScript room, because this looks far more like a scripting language. I also don't see any usings. I don't see my program. I don't see main. How does this even run? Well, that's because everything is now static, so we don't need to have that main and the program file there. We can just go straight into it. And what this does is have a lot less ceremony. So if you're coming from another language, you can come in here and it's not that heavy convention-based ceremony, and it's a lot easier to get into. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and embrace this. So start looking down through here. First of all, where are my usings? How do I add anything? Why is this working? Why am I not getting errors? Well, if we come and look in this CS_proj file, the first thing that I can see is this implicit usings. So this means that I have implied usings based on the project type I created. So this is already going to have a global scope to all things like system and all of that. So, okay, that's quite nice. I don't have this wall of using statements at the very top of my application. And then I can come down here. I've got my services, so that's my iService collection. And then my app is down here. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this thing down here? Because that's what came up in the templates. Well, this is that minimal API. And this is very much like Express.js to me, which I have done a fair bit of. And I was like, but I like all my encapsulation that I get from .NET. I don't want to be writing JavaScript style stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can see why this might be appealing to developers coming from other platforms. Okay, so that was trying to get my head around why this is a good thing. I was still very resistant. Because if I come up here, imagine how many lines of code I'm going to have in this program file if I have to register 20 or 30 services, if this is a really big enterprise-style application. And I was like, I don't like it. I just don't like it. So I would do absolutely everything I could to keep the older structure with the full web host. And that would involve creating .NET New in the CLI with a tag saying, please use .NET 5. So it would create a .NET 5 application. And then I would manually go in and update everything to .NET 6. And I was getting really tired of doing this. I was like, oh, okay, look, just try and embrace it. And that's what led me to think about different ways that I could work with this new layout, this top-level statements, and the minimal hosting pattern, which is what we've got here, and make it work for me. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So if we come across here to Rider, no, that's code. Let me just close this one so it's out the way. So okay, my Mac does not like me. I will, oh, okay, there we go. There's some things. Here we go, there we are. So I can close the .NET 5 application. And now I am in a .NET 6 application that I created earlier. So I still have the implicit usings here, so that's all good. And if we go into the program file, I've got a lot of things ready to show you. So if I come all the way up to the top, you can see that I have my own using statements in here. Now, I can get those all out the way because maybe I don't want these at the top of the project. So let's have a look how I can do that. We're going to globally scope them, which is a really nice feature in my opinion. So all we have to do is come over here and create a new class, well, not even a class, just a new CS file. We can call it whatever we want. So I'm just going to call it usings.cs. All right, so we can get rid of all of this. And if I come in here and, I don't know, I'm just going to grab all of these, which is really bad practice. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So we're going to get rid of those. You can see now I've got a whole load of red squiggles. But if I come back into this usings file and then I drop them in here, I still have red squiggles because what I need to do is go in and put the global using word. You can see now all of the red squiggles have gone, and everything is happy. So now these are, as I mentioned, globally scoped. And most of these look like they would be acceptable to have globally scoped. But don't just blanket do that. If you've got a file and that's the only place that you have that using statement, that directive, then leave it in there, okay? Maybe you don't want something globally scoped. Maybe you have naming conflicts or something like that. So you can scope that into the class or the file directly. But this has tidied everything up quite well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just zoom out ever so slightly. There we go. And we can start to come down and have a little closer look at what we've got going on here. So just as we saw in the new template, we have the web application builder, and that's our builder. And then I have this configuration. So in the .NET 5, that was created in the constructor, I believe. It was available, okay? But here, we have to go and fetch it off the configuration. So you have to go and find it, because it's not there in that first template. But it is hiding in here. Now, the order really matters here. If I want to use external configuration of some sort, and let's say I have this external configuration that you can see here, if I add it at the top in this order, the app settings file here, and indeed the environment variables and command line arguments, is going to overwrite it. So the order really, really matters. But if I have it here, and we're overwriting something in app settings, then this one will win. So it goes down through the stack, okay? So the bottommost variable that you pass in here and you configure is going to be the winner. And that's why we can have our user secrets in here, and we need that further down, because if I go and look in my app settings file, you can see that I have things like value set in user secrets. And that is absolutely fine when we go and deploy this application, because if we go back here, it's going to be overwritten by the environment variables when we go and run our application, if you've set the environment variables up there. And indeed, if we have command line arguments, the user secrets will just be ignored there because it won't be available. So that's the first thing that you need to know, is that the order is really important. So let's come on down and have a look at how we can do some dependency injection. Excuse me. All right, we'll keep going down. I'm trying not to flick it around too much. And I have this little minimal API down here. It's a little get request to go and get some waffle toppings. And I'm very partial to food demos, so most of my demos are going to be food. Now, I have a lot of nasty looking code in here that I am not happy with, but it should run, and it should return us some waffles. Famous last words. Let's go and have a look and see if it's working. Yeah, there we go. We've got some waffle toppings. But let me just show you also what we've got available for us in Swagger here. You can see we've got two categories. This top one here is for all of our minimal APIs. They're all grouped in here. And then this one, well, this is the waffle order controller. So Swagger is going to group things via the controller or whether they're a minimal API. And yes, you can mix your minimal APIs with your traditional API controllers. There's no reason not to, depending on what you want to do and how you want your system to do. It's perfectly happy to work together. Whether you do that is another question. All right, so first of all, what is wrong with what I've got here? Well, HTTP client has been newed up, but there's no using in front of it. It's not disposed of, so this is going to leave a nasty open connection, and it's just horrible. So we could do it in a using statement or using block. We could put it in block, or we could put using at the beginning of it, but we're not going to bother with that. We are going to inject it. So we have a little bit of a dependency chain here. The thing that I want to use in this function here is the waffle creation service. All of this here is stuff that shouldn't be handled by this Get method. It's not part of it, okay? We've broken that single responsibility principle. So let me get rid of these, and now we've got some red lines. But if I come up here into this expression that we've got available for us, we can go and inject that. So it was waffle creation service, okay? And we called that WCS. And there, everything is happy. Now, I'm hoping this is going to work for me today because I have some different things. We'll see how it goes, whether I tell you or not, because it might have been fixed already. So we'll see how it goes. But this isn't going to work because my IOC container doesn't have waffle creation service. So we need to go and add that all to my dependency injection up here. So we go back up, and remember our iServices over here is where we go and register our services. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to drop everything that I just cut out. What is, oh, that is the var. I was like, what is this R? It's not, I just need to move over. All right, so we need an HTTP client. Let's start with that. So if we go builder.services.add HTTP client, there we go. We've got that straight up. Now this is special because this is using behind the scenes the HTTP client factory, which I strongly encourage you to use because now you don't have to manage anything with your HTTP clients. It's completely handled for you. It creates the clients, it recycles the clients, it shares them, it disposes of them. That's the really important thing. So if you have a lot of HTTP clients in your application, this is going to mean that you don't have horrible things like socket exhaustion. You don't actually have to think about any of that. It will handle everything for you. So this is a win-win. Okay, so now we need a waffle ingredient service. So let's go and add an instance of that, or create one for us. And then we go add, I don't know, we're going to add a singleton. So we have 3 life cycles here. We have singleton, need a dot over here. And we just don't want to singleton. Thank you. Come back down here. And we have 3 life cycles. So we have singleton, transient, and scoped. And hopefully I'll have time at the end to show you the differences between those, or we can do those in a minute. So I'm just going to add a singleton, which means that this will be created once on application start or when it's first requested, and then it will hang around for the entirety of my application's life cycle. And then when my application closes down, the IOC container is going to manage it for me and close it out for me. So that's great, and especially as this needs an HTTP client. Otherwise, that wouldn't do it. So now the last thing we need to do is have a waffle creation service added. I happen to know that this has an interface. So the other way that we can add stuff, and we have got some really cool things coming out in .NET 8 for dependency injection and registering services, but I'm not going to go into those yet because .NET 8 is not out yet. So we're going to add a singleton, and this time I'm going to do an iWaffle creation service, and then when I ask for an instance of iWaffle creation service, we're going to give it this particular concrete example. So I know that I've now created a little bit of a bug because I am asking for a waffle creation service down here. If I go all the way down, see, waffle creation service. But I haven't actually registered a waffle creation service. I've registered an iWaffle creation service, an interface. And I can register lots of different implementations or concrete examples of that interface. So what I actually need to do is go and put an I down here. So I'm requesting an instance or an implementation of iWaffle creation. Now that will be happy. Let's test that that works. And make sure that we still get some waffles. Hurrah! We can still have waffles for breakfast, so that's all good. And then we can come back and stop. Alrighty, so that's a good start. We've got some things going. But as I mentioned earlier, I was really unhappy that all of these services were going to be registered in this program file. You can imagine how big this is going to get. And if I start doing other stuff, which I'm going to show you in a bit, it's going to get really messy and unmanageable. So what can we do to make this better and a nicer place to work? Well, we can start to use the extension method pattern and extend the iService collection. You could extend the web application builder, but I prefer to do iService collection, and I'll show you what we do with that just because it looks more familiar. So if I come over in here, I've got things I've prepared earlier, and I have a whole load of extensions. What I'm going to do is just grab all of these. So I've now broken the thing again, and I'm going to come into this file. So if we come up here, I can show you what an extension pattern looks like. So the first thing we have to do is add the static keyword here. So this has to be static for us to be able to extend things. And I like to use the word partial here and make a partial service collection extensions. You don't have to do that. You can make a class per file, but I think, well, these are all service collection extensions. I'll name the file whatever the extension method is, but then I put them all in service collection extensions. That's just my preference. You don't have to do that. So this is now a public static method returning iService collection because that's what I'm extending. And if we come across here, I've just given it a name that sounds kind of suitable, and then I need this keyword to make this into that extension method. So I have my iService collection, passing in services as an argument, and then I return them. So if we come here, I can drop all of these in, and if I come across and do that, everything's happy. So I've now encapsulated all of those dependencies out of the main program file into something that's more readable. And then to use them, I can just grab this. We can go back to the program file. And then here, we can go builder.services. And then we can paste in our waffle dependencies. So why I like this is because when I've got a whole load of these, as a developer coming in to read this, I can start scrolling down and go, oh, okay, so this is all, I've added all my waffle dependencies, I can do this, I can do that, I've got marketing dependencies, whatever there might be, and I don't actually have to try and understand what each individual service is unless I'm going to look at that. Also, if I'm creating a new service, I can come here and go, oh, well, I've just created a new waffle builder service. I can add that into the add waffle dependencies. So I'm encapsulating and grouping everything into highly cohesive lumps of code. So it makes it really nice to develop with and maintain and for other people to work with. But we can do better. So, as I was mentioning earlier, we have this HTTP client, and we can do some more things with that. So what I'm going to do is grab these two, and I'm grabbing those two because the waffle ingredient service is actually dependent directly on an HTTP client. So that means that we can do some cool things with it. So if I go into this folder here, we have add clients and policies. So I'm going to drop those in here. And you don't have to group things like this either. And I think this one has a bit of a, yeah, you see this one. There we go. Now we've got that partial class. I knew I'd seen a little bit of an error the other day in here. So we have our HTTP client. That's a generic one that can be used anywhere, and then you can configure it. But what can we do with this one? Well, we can make this into a strongly typed HTTP client. So if I come here, I can do this. And you can see it's still happy. And there is a big difference between these. So this particular add HTTP client, if I hover over it, is it going to let me? No, of course not. Why would it want to help me? Thanks, IntelliSense. So this add HTTP client is actually an extension of iService collection. Makes sense. But this one extends iHTTP client builder. So they are different. And that means that we can do cool stuff with it. I keep telling you we can do cool stuff with it, but not showing you. But we will get to that. One other cool thing that we can do is a halfway point between this generic HTTP client and this strongly typed HTTP client. So if you've heard the phrase strongly typed HTTP client, that's what this one is here. But we can have a named HTTP client. So we can go add HTTP client, and then we're going to do it like so. And then we can actually name it in here. So I am going to give it a name, so we can call it DevReach. And then if I go over here, we can create a client, and then we can go and set up our client. So we can have this centrally set up. We can give it a base address. So this might be familiar if you've set things up in a constructor. And then we can go new URI, and then give it an address. So I don't know, HTTPS test.test, I don't know, or test.test. Okay, so we've got that, and we can also add our headers, and anything else that you need to configure on your client can be added here. So now we've got those 3 types of HTTP client, all using the HTTP client factory. So just before I move on and show you the cool thing, which I keep promising you, but that's to keep you sitting in the room, is that how to use this particular one. And I have that set up over here. What's your problem? What have I got erroring down here? My waffle creation service. Oh, it's probably because I changed the namespace. Was it? I've broken something now. Bless you. It's all fine. We'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. Why won't this tell me the error? Is that it? Oh, here we go. There, that's the one we want. That should be happy now? Cool. Okay, so we can get that. That will now not break everything. But if I go into our waffle order controller over here, if we want to go and get that named client, we have we've got a couple of things in here. This is how we can get that named client. We inject the iHTTP client factory, and then we can just go DevReach. We can call it by name. So you do need to know it via name, and then we could create the client, and then if I want, I can go do client, or I don't know, add headers or whatever I want, So you can go in and configure it locally, or you can do it more globally in your in the sort of extension up here. Okay, so what is the cool thing I keep luring you in with? Well, that is how to make your application super resilient, and that's using policies. Now, I am a big fan of the Poly project, and that's all about resiliency policies. And you can use that directly on any type of method in your application. It doesn't need to be on an HTTP client. A good example of where you might want to use that is on a data access method, because databases can be a little bit painful and they don't always like to give you the data back. So you can have that there and be resilient around your data access. But what we have with these two in particular, the HTTP client builder implementations, so this one on line 18 and this one on line 23, is another extension allowing us to do some stuff with Poly. Okay, we cannot, however, use it on this first generic one because it doesn't extend that iHTTP client builder. Okay, so what does a policy do? Well, I'm going to show you my favorite one, which is, actually, I'm going to show you policy order. This is what policies do. I'm not going to zoom in on this document because it will make your head hurt even more than looking at it like that. But policies are a series of rules that your methods will follow in the case of something going wrong, if there's an exception. So the order in which they are done is really important. As you can see here, they go right down through this whole sort of statement and then back up. Now, the first thing that you want to happen is on the far right. So in the case of the example I'm going to show you is a retry. So let's say we have a service and something goes wrong. Rather than just coming back to the user and saying, no, sorry, you can't use that service, it's down or it's just not happy, we'll go, okay, we're going to retry in, say, 10 seconds. So we wait a few moments, we then try. We're like, oh, it's still not ready. Okay, so we're going to wait 20 seconds, and then we'll go and retry again. And so we can specify how many times we want to go and retry this method call. So then that's all the way on the right-hand side. But what happens if we keep retrying and we're still not getting through? So you need to limit the number of retries you want to do and then do something else. And that's where the circuit breaker policy comes in. So let's have a look at a closer diagram of a circuit breaker. And this is just like the electrical systems in your house. You'll have that closed circuit when everything is happy and the code is going back and forth between, let's say, your two applications. But we've now got a broken application. It's not doing any chit-chat with the other application. So we've done the retries. We've now failed several times, and that's called our failure threshold. And we're saying, okay, we're gonna act with a circuit breaker now. So we open the circuit breaker after that failure threshold is exceeded. So let's say 3 retries, and then we wait, okay? So we have this delay. We don't let any traffic go through to our application that's failing, and we don't let any more calls go through. We give it a chance. And then after a delay, we try one request, and that's called the half open stage. So we'll send that one request, and if we get an error, we're going to open again, and then we're going to wait, okay? We're going to just try this rather than this continual retry. However, if that one try works, we're going to close the circuit again, everything's happy, and then we continue as normal. So having this circuit breaker pattern in is a really good way of managing that resiliency. And you can do a lot of things around this circuit breaker as well. And then the next layer out would be something like a fallback. So, all right, we've tried, we've done the retries, didn't get through. We did the circuit breaker, it still didn't get through. So now we have a fallback, which is maybe you call a different API, or you send a message to the user or a person to go and kick the machine or whatever. So we have this sort of way of managing everything. So how do we add that to this bit of code here, this HTTP client? Well, if I scroll down here, I've already created a whole load of policies, because you don't need to see me fumble that much with live coding. So the first one we're going to look at is the retry policy. Now, we have, this is the extension that we get with Microsoft. So this is a wrapper for Poly, which is really great for your HTTP clients. And then, as I mentioned, you can bring Poly in directly to use it on any of your methods. I do have YouTube videos on how to do that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can check out YouTube, because I don't have time to show you that today. So if we have a look here, we have the retry policy. And you can see it's a nice async one, and we're telling it what we're going to act on, and that is an HTTP response message. So we've got this policy builder here, and we're going to say, handle the result on the HTTP message, and that is if we don't get an is success status code. So if it's not a 200, we're going to switch on this retry policy, okay? But we can also stack this a little bit. We can say, or that HTTP response message has the result of not found, okay? So you can customize these as much. This is just one example. And then we then go and say what we're going to do if this action happens, if this error happens. And that is, in this case, a wait and retry async. So we've got a few things in here. This is our number of times that we're going to retry, so 3. Remember, you want to limit the number of retries you do, or else you could cause other problems within your system because you're just going to get stuck in a loop of retries. And then here, we're going to specify the time. Now this one will, I believe, double the time every time. So it will wait for 2 seconds, then the next one 4 seconds, and then so on. Okay, so that's the retry bit. And as I said, we have to stack them. A retry on its own isn't much great. A circuit breaker policy on its own isn't much help. So what does the circuit breaker look? So it looks very similar. We have the policy builder, and this time we're still on our handle result, but HTTP response message with a status code of internal server error. So we're getting 500s now, okay? So this will only happen in this instance if we're getting a 500, not in anything else. So you can start building it for different status codes as well, different things happening, so you can really get granular control. And this is the most advanced overload of circuit breaker async. I think there are, well, I don't know, I think it's 4 or 5. But this is the most advanced one, and it takes 5 arguments. So the first one, we're going to say, how many allowed events are there before we break? So that's our failure threshold. And then if I scooch along here, how long are we going to wait? Well, we're not going to wait a minute, because I want to actually show you this in real time. So let's go and make that seconds, and let's put 10. And then we have these delegates here. We've got an on break, on reset, bless you, on half open. So what are those? Well, if I scroll down a little bit further, I've defined those down here. And at the moment, I've just got some console.write lines, but you should do something better with it, maybe some logging or do something else. But this is your place where you can start to get a handle on your applications and learn more about what your applications are doing and how to be more resilient for your user and give people a better experience, okay? So this is going to be your logging and other things. So we've got our on half open, on reset, and on break. All right, so how do we then use those? Well, this is where the extension methods come in nicely. We could just add them all together, but we do have this nice wrapper. So if I uncomment this, so again, we're just making a policy, and this one is a wrap async. So we've got our policy here, and then we've got this wrapper. We add in those policies, and then to use that, we can just come down here. There we go. And I've added that collection of policies to my HTTP client. Now I need to go up here and comment it out because I've got to add it twice now. And so now I've got my strongly typed HTTP client with a whole load of policies attached to it. And that's now made that much more resilient. Now I can make a whole load of other HTTP clients and use the same policy. So for example, I could go and add this one on here. It's declared afterwards, so that's why it's, here we go, I'll just move that up, stick that up here. Okay, so, you can see now I've used the same set of policies on another HTTP client, or I could go and write custom ones for this set or custom ones for that, so you can get really good control over the different aspects of your web API. So I think that's a really good thing to know about and go and research. So go and check out the Poly project. They have a great diagram with, it's my favorite chart for documentation. Using Poly directly on methods is a little bit harder to find how to do that, but that's why I created a video on it. So, all right, how does this look when it's running? Well, can't show you that yet because I haven't added the add clients and policies extension to program. So none of this is registered yet. So let's go and fix that. So I'm just going to do that here, builder.services, and add that. All right, so now let's go and run. Now, let me just go back here. The waffle ingredient service, if I come into my services, this is that strongly typed HTTP client. You can see that down here, it's going to make a request to this little API. Now that's an Azure function I've got running locally, and this is a naughty function. If I show you what that looks like, and this is all in the repo, so you can go and do this all. The little function there is there as well. This is just going to randomly generate some bad status codes, okay? So it's rigged to fail. So let's go see if we can get it. It sometimes is nice and does it the first time, but not always. Actually, if I bring over this, we can probably see the functions. All right, so you can see where it says all is good. That's when the function behaves. And so I'm going to just make some requests to it. We're going to have to do a few. Let me just refresh. We're okay. Let's go. All right. All right, we got an error. So you can see we've got a retry going in there. That's what the spinning wheel is. We're retrying. We've tried twice now, and we got through on that third one. Okay, so let's go and do that again. Oh, that was fine. We've got an error. See, we're waiting. We're doing the retry, and we got through. So you can see this retry in action. I'm going to get it to kick in the circuit breaker in a minute, hopefully. Come on, error. We've got one. We need to get a couple in. So we've got two. Nope. I can go and fix it. All right. Now, if I was going to come from another browser, say, and another user, this would be locking it out as well. So, all right, we're going to hit our circuit breaker. Fingers crossed. Yes. Okay. So you can see now we've got this exception here. If I just move that over. We've now got our circuit breaker broken circuit exception. I've left this raw so we could see it here, but on that exception, if you had a try catch on that, you could go and do something, okay? So you've got this specific exception coming through, and this is now telling you to do stuff. Now that was, what did I set it as, 10 seconds? So I can straight away try. But if I go and, if we had that coming in again, and we were inside that time delay, we wouldn't be able to make that request again. And we'll see if we can trigger it to go again. Hopefully that will go now. Did that? Yes, okay, so if I quickly try and do that again, I wasn't quick enough. Okay, so it will lock it down and you won't be able to do it. It's open, so it's not going to accept any calls. So you get the idea. You can go and pop that in and have a play with it. All right, so that is circuit breakers. Let's have a closer look at the minimal APIs and how to manage those. So if I stop this and we come over here, and I'm just going to close some of these down, I'm lost in Windows. I'm one of these people who likes to have no tabs on their browser, as few tabs. I'm an inbox zero type person as well. So I have to kind of close these down as I go, close. Why aren't you closing? I don't know if I can continue if it doesn't close. I'll try. Okay. Why is it not closing? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to try and move on. Okay, just before we go and look at the minimal APIs, I just want to show you this database one down here. So I've got an extension method for, I want to show you two more before we go to minimal APIs. We've got time, it's fine. If Gerald can go over, I can go over. So we have builder.services add databases. So this is an extension method I have written. And what you'll notice is I've passed in the configuration here. I didn't do that on the other ones, but that's because with my database, I actually need some configuration. So if we have a look at this extension method, again, I've got it as a partial class. You don't have to. That's just the way I like to organize it. This one looks very similar to the other extension methods I've written. I still have the this.services. That must be the first argument. And then I've said, actually, I also need configuration. So I can pass that in. Now, this is why some people like to extend Web Application Builder rather than iService Collection. But then if I went into program and I'd extended the builder, I'd be writing builder.add databases. Okay, I'd be doing that. And it doesn't look as familiar as having builder.services. It's not instantly recognizable that I'm adding stuff to my iService container, okay? My iService collection. So I personally don't like to do that. But that's up to you. That's your preference. But what that does do is mean that for things like my DB connection, I can go and get my configuration from app settings, okay, because I've passed in that configuration. And the other thing I wanted to show you about that is if I come into marketing dependencies here, now let's say this marketing private dependency is something I don't want to have in my IOC container. It's something that I just want scoped to this particular marketing endpoint service. But if marketing endpoints is an HTTP client, there's a big problem with what I've written here. And this should attract your attention if ever you see something newed up outside of the IOC container. Because what this means is the lifecycle will not be managed by our IOC container now. So in the case of marketing endpoints, which needs an HTTP client, it's going to have an open connection, okay? The HTTP client might not be managed by our HTTP client factory because of the way we're creating this. Maybe I've got a using statement in there or something like that. It's not in the ecosystem as I would like it. So it won't get disposed of on shutdown, which is not great. So how can we get around it? Well, if I comment this out, the way we can do that is still create marketing private dependency on its own, but then we can go context, and then we can go and new marketing endpoints in here instead. And we can pass in that private marketing ones in. Okay, so now, because I have newed this up within the context of the service provider, the lifecycle is going to be managed for me. So wherever you can, try and get the automatic awesome features that we've got to manage your code for you, so you don't have to. So that was just the one thing I wanted to show you. Okay, so now let's go down and look at these pesky minimal APIs and make them a little bit tidier. So we'll scroll down here. Alrighty. So just like all of those services, I don't want to have all of my APIs just dumped in my program file. That seems like a terribly horrible idea. It's going to make my OCD really pop out, okay? So I'm going to cut that, and I can actually create an extension method for web application builder here. So we've got the public static class, and this one's web application. So just as we've done with the other ones, I can go public static. I need to return web application. And then we want to go, it's not application builder this time because we built it, it's web application. And then we can go add APIs, and then we need the this keyword for web application. We're going to call that app. If we had any other arguments that we needed to pass in, we could do them there. And then to make it all happy, we need to go, not ret run, I always type ret run, return app. Okay, so now we've got that happy. I can come in here and I can drop my minimal API. And just as we did with the other ones, I can come and do that, pop it out. We can come in here. Oh, look, I've got one there. Did I call it the same thing? I did. Good on me. All right, so that's a get, but just like your RESTful APIs, we can have the same route here for a post, okay? So let's go and do that. So how do we write a post? If I come down here, I can do app.map post, and I can go and give it the name. I don't think I copied it. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Let's just go and do that. So we can grab that, bring it down, we can drop it in here, and then we can have our nice expression. Okay, all right, so that's our post, but I probably want to still have my iWaffle creation service injected. Also note how I can have async here as well, and awaits, just to point that out. So I want this. Now this is where I'm not sure it's going to be working for us, but we'll see. And I also want to say, I don't know, I have an order, because it's a post, there's going to be something in the body, right? Okay. So I've done that. Now, we're going to see if this is going to error now, because I've had an issue where it's been erroring. In this case, let me do this. Because this here is from the IOC container, and this here is from the body. Okay, so how does it know the difference? Well, what I learnt on Tuesday, when a member of the .NET team was in my talk, which I gave on Tuesday, I gave this talk on Tuesday, and that was Safia, and she told me that they've now got this thing in here that goes and checks to see if this is in the IOC container, and if not, it's going to assume that it's in the message body. So we're going to see if it works, because I've had this problem where it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, I'll show you how to fix it. So I don't know, let's put something var, I'm just going to grab that body, var x equals order, okay? Just something in there just so we can see. So we'll put a breakpoint. I've not tested this. I wanted to test it live with all of you, so we'll see. So we're going to run it. Okay, so I don't know why that was showing up there, but now you can straight away see we've got our get and our post. So let's see if we can try it out. I'll just, I don't know, we'll put some random stuff in here. So 10, I don't know why that's all errored. 10, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know why it's all got those underlines, but okay, let's just go with that. Oh, look, it worked. Hurrah, it is working. So we should be able to see some stuff in here. Cool. So the update that it looks like it was working. Now, what I normally was doing before we saw this magicness that I've just shown you, because it's kind of magic that it knows that this is from the IOC container, but this is from the body, was I had to bring in the MVC library into my application. And just in case you come up against this, you bring in MVC and you do from services with this decorator or annotation. And in here, you could go from body, okay? But it looks like you don't need that anymore. So you can see I would have had to have brought in Microsoft ASP netcore.mvc.fromBody attribute, which we've seen in our API controllers. And that would be a little bit like, this is a minimal API, well, I don't really want to bring it in. So it looks like that is now working. So yay, we tested that out and we've proved that to be working. So that is a very nice little quality of life update there. Okay, so you can see now we can group our minimal APIs together, and you can still have your heavyweight controllers. You can mix them together. It depends on what you're going to do. There are some performance improvements with minimal APIs. They're a little bit faster because they don't have all of that ceremony that an API controller has. Okay, so we have got time. I can show you the last little thing, which is just to refresh your memory on life cycles. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that we have three. We have singleton, scoped, and transient. But I love to show what those actually look like. So I have this nice little extension method here. And if we go in, I've got three different demos ready to go. So the first one we're going to do is the singleton lifecycle. And if I just step into life cycles, what it does is create a list of three random numbers. Or actually, it just creates a random collection. And then I have this minimal API somewhere around here, over here. No, that's the one we're just in. Let me go back. It's in program. See, I've got too many tabs open. If I scroll down here, all the way down, you can see I've got a minimal API. And this one's asking for 2 instances of lifecycles. So we're going to have L1 and L2, and then it's going to print them to screen. So if I run this, remember we've got the singleton. Lifecycles is registered as a singleton at the moment. I know how to get these things together. I don't know how to split them. Maybe like that. Yes, okay. So we can just come back here. That'd be better. Hurrah. Okay, so now you can see I've got life cycles. Let's go and get it. Alrighty. So as expected, when we create a singleton, we create it once on application start. So we're going to have the same set of numbers. So we've got 677 and 677. Now, if I go and refresh that, guess what? It's still going to be 677, 677. It doesn't matter how many times I do this, it's going to be 677 because we've created one instance. It's run that code once, and the list is always going to be the same. However, let's go and try our next life cycle. So I'm going to comment this one out. I don't know why I've got singleton scoped in that. I mean, it's really quite obvious, but never mind. So scoped. So what does scoped mean? Well, this means it's created once per request. And if I come down here and we open this up and we go try it out, we can go here. All right, so you can see 676, 676. Okay, both are the same, but if I refresh it, 048. Okay, so it was created once for the request, and then for both of those requests in our for the instance of it, we got the same instance. Okay, but the final one, I think you can probably guess what's going to happen now, is if we come down here and then we run it, and we go across. I think you're all with me. You know what's going to happen. It creates an instance every time it's asked for. So now I've got 921 and 983. It's created one for that first request in the arguments and one for the second. Now, I've got 1 minute left. When do you use which one? Well, the way I like to think about which life cycle to use is what's it holding on to? If you've got a singleton, I like to think of that as a processor. It's going to do something to data or a class or something. It's going to do a transform or whatever, but it's not going to retain any of that information. It's just going to act on it and let it pass through. Because what we don't want to do is retain information in a singleton that we could expose to other people, so user data. If it's holding on to user data, you do not want it to be a singleton because you're going to expose people's secret stuff to other people, and we don't want that. So if you want to have actual data retention, depending on how sensitive your data is and what you're doing with it, you're going to choose between scoped and transient, because every request that will be disposed, it will get rid of all of the information stored on it and then create a new instance with fresh data coming in. So there's no chance of you sharing secret stuff across requests. Okay, so that's kind of what you want to do. Like, I would definitely avoid doing repositories as singletons. That's generally entity framework, because of the way it works has always been, you've always been advised not to use the singleton pattern with that. Some people even go as far as having it as transient. It also depends on your load on the system. Singletons are created once and then kept in memory. So if you're using them a lot, that's efficient. But if you aren't using them a lot, I don't know, once an hour, it's more efficient to create it and dispose of it. So there's quite a few factors on when you use either one. And with that, that's kind of everything I wanted to show you, just to get going. If you have any questions, you can direct them to, I don't know, someone who's like here that isn't me. I don't know. There's a lot of Microsoft people here you can go and direct questions to, or you can come and find me. You can DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open. You can go and get this code at Layla-P, and you can go check out my videos on Layla Codes on YouTube. And with that, thank you very, very much for your time.